The 8th of April, 1945, about 5 miles northwest of the city of Weimar, Nazi Germany. Buchenwald camp prisoners, using a secret shortwave transmitter and small generator, send the Morse code message to the Allies, to the army of General Patton. This is the Buchenwald concentration camp. SOS. We request help. They want to evacuate us. The SS want to destroy us. 3 minutes after the transmission, desperate prisoners receive the message, "Hold out, rushing to your aid, staff of Third Army." 3 days later, on the 11th of April, the US 6th Armored Division liberates Buchenwald and finds more than 21,000 survivors, who are weak and emaciated. After General Patton tours the camp, he orders the mayor of the nearby city of Weimar to bring 1,000 citizens to Buchenwald to be shown the crematorium and other evidence of Nazi atrocities. The Americans want to ensure that the German people take responsibility for Nazi crimes, instead of dismissing them as atrocity propaganda. Many of them cry, and some even faint after seeing the dead bodies, starved survivors behind barbed wire fences, as well as a table displaying paintings on human skins, various parts of the human body preserved in alcohol, and 2 heads which were shrunk to 1/5 of the normal size. One of the most infamous perpetrators of the criminal Nazi regime, responsible for these atrocities, is the camp's commandant, Hermann Pister. Hermann Pister was born on the 21st of February, 1885, in Lübeck, then part of the German Empire. He grew up in Switzerland, and after completing secondary school, he worked as a cabin boy in the Imperial Navy, where he remained until 1910. The First World War began on the 28th of July, 1914. Pister joined the German Imperial Navy in 1916 and served there until the end of the war as a vice sergeant. The First World War ended on the 11th of November 1918 when the German leaders signed the armistice in the Compiègne forest in France. In the new Weimar Republic, which was the name given to the German government from 1918 to 1933, Pister began an apprenticeship as an auto mechanic and went on to become an automobile salesman and manager. When Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January 1933, Pister was already a member of the Nazi Party, as well as the SS, both of which he had joined 1 year earlier. In March 1933, less than 2 months after the Nazis took power, the first concentration camp, Dachau, was established. The Nazi camp system began as a system of repression directed against political opponents of the Nazi state. In the early years of the Third Reich, the Nazis imprisoned primarily communists and socialists. In about 1935, the regime also began to imprison those whom it designated as racially or biologically inferior, especially the Jews. During World War II, the organization and scale of the Nazi camp system expanded rapidly, and the purpose of the camps evolved beyond imprisonment toward forced labor and outright murder. Throughout German-occupied Europe, the Germans arrested those who resisted their domination and those they judged to be racially inferior or politically unacceptable. People arrested for resisting German rule were mostly sent to forced labor or concentration camps. The Second World War, which began on the 1st of September 1939, brought unprecedented growth in both the number of camps and the number of prisoners. Within 3 years, the number of prisoners quadrupled, from about 25,000 before the war to about 100,000 in March 1942. The camp population came to include prisoners from almost every European nation. Prisoners in all the concentration camps were literally worked to death. According to SS reports, there were more than 700,000 prisoners registered in the concentration camps in January 1945. The Germans deported Jews from all over occupied Europe to extermination camps in Poland, where they were systematically killed, and also to concentration camps where they were drafted for forced labor, which was extermination through work. Several 100,000 Roma people and Soviet prisoners of war were also systematically murdered. Part of the Nazi camp system also became Hermann Pister. In October 1939, 1 month after the outbreak of World War II, Pister was given the command of Hinzert concentration camp, which remained mainly autonomous until the 21st of November 1944, when it was administratively linked to the Buchenwald concentration camp. Between 1939 and 1945, 13,600 political prisoners between the ages of 13 and 80 were imprisoned at Hinzert. Many were in transit towards larger concentration camps, where most would be killed. However, many prisoners were also executed at Hinzert. Inmates were housed in 4 barracks, each containing 2 spaces that in turn contained 26 bunk beds for a projected capacity of 208 prisoners. Later, straw mattresses were added to increase the total capacity to 560. The camp was administered, run, and guarded mainly by the SS, who according to the Hinzert survivors were notorious for their brutality and viciousness. Prisoners sometimes had to stand still for hours, facing the master's punishment. The roll call area was also used as a drill and exercise area, where inmates had to jump up and down at 4:30 a.m. to the sound of a drum. In 1941, Karl Otto Koch was relieved of his position as Commandant of Buchenwald and later arrested for embezzlement and other charges. On the 1st of January 1942, he was replaced by Hermann Pister. Prisoners lived in the Buchenwald main camp, which was surrounded by an electrified barbed wire fence, watchtowers, and a chain of sentries outfitted with automatic machine guns. At the entrance to the main camp, there was a notorious punishment block known as the bunker, where prisoners who violated the camp regulations were punished and often tortured to death. In addition to the punishment block, the main camp included 33 wooden barracks, disinfection buildings, a brothel, and a crematorium. Most of the early inmates at Buchenwald were political prisoners, people who had been arrested for some form of political opposition to the Nazi regime. In addition to the political prisoners and Jews, Buchenwald prisoners also included repeat offenders, Jehovah's Witnesses, Sinti and Roma people, and German military deserters. Koch, and later Pister, were masters at inventing all sorts of new bullying techniques and punishments, but did not soil their hands on the internees. To that purpose, they had other SS henchmen who greedily went about their business. SS Sturmbannführer Otto Barnewald was notorious for his cruelty, but SS Hauptscharführer Martin Sommer was possibly even worse. He was in charge of the bunker, the camp prison. Whoever ended up there was at Sommer's mercy. He killed dozens of prisoners with his own hands. Sommer's specialty was hanging prisoners by their wrists from trees. Because of the screams of the victims, this torture method became known as the singing forest. This caused complete dislocation of the shoulders, so they could hardly use their arms for days on end. Those who survived had to return to work the next day as usual. Many of them were shot, as they were regarded as slackers according to the guards. Another method of torture was known as Krimschließen. The prisoner was bent backwards, so his wrists would be tied to his ankles, and his body took the form of a circle. Subsequently, Sommer kicked them until they gave no signs of life anymore. All these methods of torture were tolerated by Pister. In early April 1945, with the Allied forces a few miles away from the camp, Pister ordered evacuation of the camp. On the 7th of April 1945, the first group of prisoners had to march to the railroad station, then would be placed in open boxcars and sent to Dachau. This train came to be known as the Death Train. Loaded with 4,480 prisoners, the train had been en route for 21 days. The SS had crammed the prisoners in goods wagons and given them practically nothing to eat or drink. During the journey, thousands died of hunger and exhaustion or were shot by the SS. A train full of dying and already dead persons arrived in Dachau. Only 816 people survived the transport. The SS refused the train entry into the SS camp so that it remained standing on the track in front of the gates. Upon reaching the Dachau concentration camp, US Army troops found the bodies in the wagons, a discovery that traumatized many of them and triggered Dachau liberation reprisals, also known as the Dachau massacre, during which 30 to 50 SS men were killed. The Buchenwald camp was eventually liberated by the US 6th Armored Division on the 11th of April 1945, a few days after the departure of the death train. The division liberated over 21,000 survivors who were weak and emaciated. They survived because when Gestapo headquarters at Weimar telephoned the camp administration to announce that it was sending explosives to blow up any evidence of the camp, including its inmates, the Gestapo did not know that the administrators had already fled, and a prisoner answered the phone informing headquarters that explosives would not be needed, as the camp had already been blown up, which was not true. Several journalists arrived on the same day, including Edward R. Morrow, whose radio report of his arrival and reception was broadcast on CBS. Morrow's report also said, "I asked to see one of the barracks. It happened to be occupied by Czechoslovaks. When I entered, men crowded around, tried to lift me onto their shoulders. They were too weak. Many of them could not get out of bed. I was told that this building had once stabled 80 horses. There were 1,200 men in it, 5 to a bunk. The stink was beyond all description. As we walked out into the courtyard, a man fell dead. 2 others, they must have been over 60, were crawling toward the latrine. I saw it, but I will not describe it. Between July 1937 and April 1945, the SS imprisoned some 250,000 persons from all countries of Europe in Buchenwald. Exact mortality figures for the Buchenwald site can only be estimated, as camp authorities never registered a significant number of prisoners. The SS murdered at least 56,000 male prisoners in the Buchenwald camp system. Some 11,000 of them were Jews. Justice finally caught up with Hermann Pister when in 1945 he was arrested and taken into custody by the Americans after they tracked him down in a prisoner of war camp near Munich. Like many other SS men, he had tried to disappear among the masses of German prisoners of war. Pister, with 30 other defendants, was then tried at the Buchenwald Trial, which began on the 11th of April 1947 in the internment camp of Dachau, where the former Dachau concentration camp had been located until late April 1945. Next to Pister, members of the command staff, as well as the widow of the first commander, Ilse Koch, were indicted. Also, 3 of the camp doctors and senior SS medical officers had to stand trial. Finally, even block leaders, detachment commanders, 3 prisoner functionaries, and a civilian employee stood trial. Buchenwald survivors testified, among them Petr Zenkel, former mayor of Prague and later deputy prime minister of Czechoslovakia, who said, "Compared to the food of the prisoners, the pigs in the SS stables received better feed." Hermann Pister was charged with participation in a common plan to violate the laws and usages of war of the Hague Convention of 1907 and the Third Geneva Convention of 1929 regarding the rights of the prisoners of war. Whilst on trial, Pister claimed he did not know what the Hague Convention was and added he was not the one who brought all those people to Buchenwald. He denied any knowledge of the existence of the extermination camps and tried to convince the court that unlike his predecessor, Karl Otto Koch, he tried to improve the living conditions for the prisoners, for example, by issuing an order that the mistreatment of inmates would be punished most severely. However, his lies did not help him escape justice. On the 14th of August 1947, the US military tribunal found Pister guilty and sentenced him to death by hanging. In the end, however, Pister avoided execution, as on the 28th of September 1948, he died of an acute heart attack in Landsberg Prison. He was 63 years old. There were no tears shed for Hermann Pister. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.